Welcome to Superhero Pow. I'm your host nerd, Tom Frumgen. Greetings, fiction lovers. Welcome to another installment of Story Time, where I will regale you with another tale of action and adventure. This time with one of my pitch scripts based on Jason of Star Command, the late 70s, early 80s sci-fi TV show. It's basically an adaptation of the show. And now here's part one of A Man Called Dragos. 10,000 light years from the planet Earth, on the edge of the Orion Spur, sits Star Command, the pinnacle of known sentient achievement. As beautiful cone-shaped buildings grow out of and beneath the 1 mile thick, nearly 2 mile long asteroid. Many domes of glass and white metal dot the rocky landscape as well, home to the most adventurous and brilliant minds of the galaxy. Its mission? To push beyond the known and forge relationships between worlds with a respect for life and knowledge. In 50 years of operation, it has never seen beings outside the Orion Spur. Until now. Starfire 12, this is Star Command, please report. Starfire 12, this is Star Command, please report, repeats Lieutenant Andrea Voss, the young, fair-skinned, dark-haired communications officer seated at her communications station in the main control room of Star Command. The large circular room with 2-story high walls is covered with many large communication monitors. Several workstations surround the room against the wall with other officers of Star Command at work. The communication station is away from the wall near the center raised dais of the room. Like most of Star Command, the decor is pristine white, with computer switches and control panels everywhere. Andrea continues to speak into her control panel, which looks like an audio engineer's workstation. Chris, this is Andrea and Professor Parsipus. Do you read me? Besides Andrea, standing up is Professor Parsiput, a balding older man with wild red hair, that which remains. Parsiput is the head scientist of Star Command, and as usual, he's excited over the proceedings. Yeah, I read you, Andrea. Chris's voice finally comes in from over the radio. Sorry for the delay. They're still setting up down here. Half a light year away on a massive rock asteroid, JX9, Starfire 12 sits on the surface. Beside it are several large container pods delivered to the asteroid via the Starfire. Several meters away from the Starfire is the opening of a huge cave. Deep inside the cave is a large 6-person space buggy with a trailer attached to the back. 5 scientists in spacesuits work to remove the equipment and other smaller high-tech white containers from the trailer. At the driver's seat of the buggy sits Captain Chris Spencer, the young blonde-haired pilot of Starfire 12. Unbeknown to Captain Spencer and Lieutenant Voss, a third malevolent presence is observing their actions. Andrea at Star Command continues to speak. Receiving, do you have an estimate of when you'll be heading back now? Chris answers, I'll probably be here for another hour. Once T-Gar and these guys get settled in, I'll be heading back to the surface and zip on back. Professor Parsiput, who has been chomping at the bit to speak, finally leans over Andrea and calls out, Chris, make sure T-Gar is setting up the comm station first. I'd like to be able to speak to him directly. Andrea tries to push back on the professor, who is just a little bit too on top of her. Watching the scientist hard at work, Chris replies, Yeah, they're doing it now, Professor. The professor excitedly replies, That's good, because I know he's going to forget to calibrate the ion recorder based on the magnetic field of the asteroid, because if he doesn't set it... Not too interested, Chris cuts him off. Yeah, I'll make sure to tell him that, Professor. A mysterious voice speaks unheard by the members of Star Command. Now. Inside the vast cave of asteroid JX9, the ground begins to shake. Rocks tumble from the cave ceiling, and cracks form on the walls. It's as if a small child were grasping the asteroid at both ends and shaking it. Holy crap! Chris interjects as he falls out of the space buggy, and the scientists around him fight for their footing and fall to the ground. Back at Star Command, Andrea pushes Parsiput aside. Out of the way, Parsiput! Then into the radio. Chris, what's wrong? Can you read me? Chris! Starfire 12 breaks loose from the asteroid and floats away as the asteroid continues to shake. Let's see how they deal with that, a menacing voice comments on the scene. Inside the asteroid, just as suddenly as it started, the shaking stops, and the silence that comes from deep space returns to the cavern. Chris and the 5 scientists lay flat upon the ground, wondering if it is finally safe. Andrea's voice calls out to him via the radio inside his helmet. "Chris, what's happening? Answer me!" Chris picks himself off the ground, wary of what could happen next. "I'm here, Andrea. We just experienced an asteroid quake. Felt like the place was going to rip apart." Professor Parsifoot protests and again leans over Andrea. "An asteroid quake? That's impossible. I have..." Andrea quickly and forcibly pushes him back again. "Shut up, Parsifoot. Chris, is everyone okay?" Chris walks over to the space buggy, where a large rock has fallen on it from the ceiling, smashing it beyond its ability to operate. "Yeah, everyone seems to be okay. Can't say that much for our equipment." The scientists scarcely know where to begin, looking over their scattered and ruined equipment. As a thought crosses Chris's mind, he taps in some commands on his wrist computer. The monitor of the wrist computer is displayed on his helmet's window, and the readout confirms his fear. Starfire 12, their only means to go home, is no longer on the asteroid. "Damn," he utters. "Chris, what's wrong?" asks Andrea. "I think we have a big problem down here," he answers. Moments later, in the briefing room, which is laid out like a small classroom, 5 rows of 5 chairs with small folding desks sit on an inclined floor, face a large video screen, and a podium beside it. Dressed in a blue officer uniform, Commander Carnarvon stands next to the video screen as it displays pictures of the asteroid with maps showing the location of the people inside. Carnarvon is an older, slightly overweight man with graying hair and a mustache. As the director of Star Command, he addresses Captain Nicole Davoff, a young female with short brown hair, and a large, lean man with dark hair, not dressed as a Space Command pilot, Jason. "All right, that's the situation. Professor Parsifoot assures me that there will be no more quakes, so I want you two to fly down to the asteroid and rescue Captain Spencer and the scientific team. Do you have any questions?" A bit skeptical, Jason asks, "So we land on the asteroid and drive buggies down the cavern to pick everybody up?" "Yes," Carnarvon confirms. Jason shoots back. "I don't like it." With a smirk, Carnarvon says, "You don't have to like it, Jason. You just have to do it. I would like all my people back in one piece, if you don't mind." Jason continues, "How big is the cave?" Getting annoyed, Carvin answers, "Big enough to drive a buggy through. What are you getting at?" Jason stands up, ready to go. "I'll tell you when I get there. Oh, and I want both buggies on Nicole's ship." Still in her seat, looking up at Jason, Nicole remarks, "Oh, now I don't like the plan." Jason pats her on the shoulder as he heads for the door. "Relax, kid. You're the backup plan." Nicole gets up from her chair and says to herself, "Now I really don't like the plan." As the two head for the exit, they stop and turn back as the commander yells, "Jason, don't screw this up." Within the hour, Jason and Nicole's 2 Starfires hover over the JX-9 asteroid. The Starfires are the main spaceships of Star Command. They appear as sleek and as big as a simple shuttle, but their cargo area is much smaller to make room for 2 large cylindrical engines, making them one of the fastest and most maneuverable ships. Also, attached to the front of the Starfire is the barbell-shaped pod, capable of detaching from the Starfire and being flown as a sublight spacecraft. At the controls of her Starfire, Nicole radios Star Command. "Okay, Andrea, we've reached JX-9 and are preparing to land." Jason's voice comes over the radio. "Hold off on that, Nicole. I want to try something." Back in the control room of Star Command, Lieutenant Andrea and Captain Carnarvon aren't too pleased at what Jason is saying. Andrea starts, Commander, do you want me to..." Carnarvon steels himself for whatever Jason may try and waves his hand. "No, let's see what Jason has in mind. Though I'm sure he's going to give me a heart attack." In the spacious red and black decorated interior of the Starfire cockpit, Jason sits in one of the 2 red-cushioned swivel pilot chairs. He stares intently at his video screens, showing maps of the asteroid and the cave. Outside the Starfire's transparent steel window is the asteroid itself. "Looks just wide enough," he mutters to himself. Feeling more sure of himself, he remarks, "Well, here goes nothing." And he gets up from his chair. Moments later, the pod of his Starfire detaches from the nose cone. Nicole's voice quickly comes over the radio. "Jason, why have you detached your pod?" As she watches Jason's pod fly down to the surface of the asteroid, he replies, "Let's just say I don't like the idea of landing on an unstable asteroid." And then, in disbelief, as his pod flies into the cave. Nicole then attempts to report what she has just seen. "Star Command, Jason's flown his pod into the cave." Elsewhere, an unseen malevolent voice speaks. "Now that's interesting." Back at Star Command, Commander Carnarvon is pacing around Andrea and the communication station, muttering to himself. "I knew he was going to give me a heart attack. I just knew it." Then he turns sharply to Andrea. "Andrea, contact Captain Spencer and tell him what's coming his way." Deep inside the cave of asteroid JX9, the 5 scientists sit around their busted gear, awaiting rescue. Captain Chris Spencer leaps to his feet and speaks into his helmet's communicator. "He's doing what? Of all the stupid... Why wasn't Paul or Linda in charge of this mission? He's going to get us all killed." Trying to defuse Chris's objections, the commander says, "Calm yourself, Chris. Jason has yet to kill anyone. Just be ready to meet him. The ship might not be small enough to reach you." In the vacuum of the cave, no noise is heard as the pod scrapes up against its lava-hardened walls. But inside the pod, the scraping is heard all too well. I'm sure it's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing. Just keep going. Can't turn back now," Jason says to himself. Chris and the scientist first see the bright lights of the pod coming down the tunnel towards them. Then the pod itself comes into full view, and they are all in disbelief as it floats over them and then opens up a side door, making it possible for everyone to climb into the pod without the pod landing. At Star Command, Jason's voice comes over the radio. "Commander, I've made contact with the stranded party." Sarcastically, Commander Carnarvon replies, "Well, I'm glad to hear everything is going to plan." After a few breathless moments, everyone is safe aboard the pod. 4 scientists are crammed into one side of the pod, which can only fit 2 comfortably, while Chris, Jason, and T. Gar, the leader of the landing party, a young Asian man, are crammed into the other side. With their space helmets now removed, T reports, "Okay, Jason, that's it. Everyone's packed into the other side, and we're ready to go." Jason replies, "Good to hear, Gar. Good to see you, too." Chris, sitting next to Jason, not looking too happy, asks, "So what's your plan, Jason? You gonna fly us out of here backwards now?" Not looking up from the control panel, Jason replies, "No, Chris, that would be stupid." The pod's twin laser cannons at the bottom of each side of the barbell shape light up. Within seconds, the cave is filled with smoke as the lasers strike the cave walls. Back at Star Command, the noise is carried over Jason's radio, taking Andrea and Commander Carnarvon completely by surprise. "What in the holy trinity was that?" Nicole's voice comes over the radio. "I'm not sure how to tell you this, Commander, but Jason just blew a hole in the asteroid and is flying his pod out through it. Jason's pod flies through the dust cloud issuing forth from the asteroid with barely a scratch on it. Carnarvon tries to speak. "Gah! Well, are they all right?" Over the radio, Jason responds, "Of course we are. As you said, Commander, everything is going to plan." Chris, sitting next to Jason, isn't pleased. "Sweet, merciful... Jason! One of these days, one of your mad schemes is going to get somebody killed. And it better not be me." Jason looks over at him and smiles. "I'll make a note of that, Chris." Chris shakes his head, thinking to himself that Jason is just incorrigible. But somewhere, somehow, someone is most impressed. Very interesting. Yes, very interesting indeed. Hours later, Professor Parsifoot sits at his desk in his very cluttered office. As with most of Star Command, white steel is the dominant color. He has several monitors attached to his desk so he can monitor several things at once. And every shelf and flat surface is crammed with all kinds of scientific gizmos and whatsits. Although his office is not without humanities as well. Several comfortable chairs and a large couch against the wall facing his desk. Jason and Nicole sit on the couch as Chris stands by a typical red Star Command sliding door. Nicole helplessly watches as Chris berates the professor. "What the hell was that, Professor? You said that rock was stable." Parsifoot meekly replies, "It was. Is." Chris continues, "Clearly not, wouldn't you say?" Mustering his intellectual courage, Parsifoot barks back, "I would not. The gravitational alignment of the iron core combined with the clockwise rotation of the mass in conjunction with the stellar flow, not to mention the solidity rate of the igneous rock, are in complete alignment with the PSIs of the Starfire's thrust and the pressure of the scientific party." Confused silence is the only response to Parsifoot's explanation. That is until Jason, who had mostly been ignoring the conversation, sitting on the couch with a 38th century beer can in his hand, starts to laugh. Chris gets more upset. "What the hell are you laughing at? What the hell does that even mean?" Slowing his laugh, Jason responds, "I have no idea what any of that means. That's why it's funny." Chris has had enough. "Screw this. I have a report to fill out about this mess, Parsifoot." As he storms out of the office, Nicole turns to Jason. "Speaking of reports, Jason, you better fill out one too, since you haven't filled one out in like a month. And why are you drinking a beer?" Jason takes a drink and replies, "I'm off duty, that's why." She corrects him, "No, you're not." Surprised by this fact, Jason questions, "I'm not? Well, here, then you take it." Then he offers Nicole the beer. Nicole replies, "Jason, I'm on duty." She then gets up from the couch, tired of the conversation as well. He's all yours, Parsifoot. I'm going to get started on my own report." As she leaves the room, Parsifoot is a little perplexed by everyone leaving his office in a huff. Still sitting on the couch, Jason offers his beer to Parsifoot. "Hey, Parsifoot, you want this?" To which Parsifoot calmly states, "I'm on duty too, Jason." With nothing to do with the beer, Jason quickly downs it, as Parsifoot asks, "So why don't you like filling out reports?" Jason replies, "Why don't you like rugby?" Parsifoot wrinkles his face, saying, "That's a bad analogy, but I get your point." Jason gets up from the couch and drops the empty beer can in the trash can near Parsifoot's desk. "Hey, Parsifoot, let's get out of here and take a break in the upper-level cafeteria." Parsifoot quickly looks down at one of his keyboards. "I'm a little busy right now, Jason." Jason continues, Come on. I'm sure you've been looking for a way to get away from your desk and play with Wiki." Parsifoot thinks out loud, "Well, true. All right, I could use a break." Parsifoot gets up from his desk with a big smile as the two friends leave the office. Somewhere else, a tired old man sits on the floor in a tattered Star Command uniform. The floor is smooth black metal, but the walls are red rough rock. The old man gazes out a small diamond-shaped window with a view of deep space, his only solace in his small prison cell. The malevolent voice speaks, "I thought you would be more excited, Nadell. I brought you back home to your side of the galaxy." The captured space explorer, Arthur Nadell, turns his head to face his captor through the metal bars of his prison cell. Then he sheepishly looks away. The voice continues, "And I did find Star Command. It's everything you said it was. And I must say I'm having quite a bit of fun playing with it." Nadell has no reply. "Nothing to say, Nadell?" "Leave him alone, Dragos," a female voice cries out from another cell, where the young, dark-skinned Princess Allegra, wrapped in a regal blue cape, stands defiantly behind her prison cell door, to which the powerful man the voice belongs to turns his head towards her. Few men can measure up to the stature of the bald and bearded Dragos, over 2 meters tall and 158 kilos, dressed in black leather with a strange golden crown wrapped around his head, extending over his left eye with a red circular eyepiece. He smiles. But you always have something to say, don't you, Princess? Well, unfortunately, I have no time for you. I'm still playing with Star Command. He gives her a twisted smile, then turns quickly, swirling his black and red cape behind him. With a broad laugh, he leaves his prisoners alone. Moments later, Draco enters his control room, which is guarded by two leather, hairy-like beings. The red-hued shambled mounds don't move or say anything as Draco enters between them. Like most of the ship, the walls are made of a coarse rock, while the floors are smooth. The front of the control room is a giant transparent steel half-dome, outside of which is the vastness of deep space. Under the half-dome is Draco's computer station, which is the size of a small bar and is covered with various switches, knobs, keyboards, and monitors. Draco had entered the room through one of the several entrances at the back of the room. One hidden behind a curtain, one between two rock pillars, and one rotating gold door. The back wall also has other system and control panels on them. Commander Vox, a large ogre of a being with bare arms and an armored chest plate, stands by them. The bald, pointed-eared commander bows slightly as Dragos walks in his typical regal fashion towards his computer station. Dragos sits on his black and gold-like throne chair. The chair automatically rotates him and moves him closer to the computer station. Once seated, Vox speaks. Lord Dracos, Phase 2, ready to commence. With an evil smile, Draco remarks, Excellent, Commander Vox. Fire away. The strange contraption looks almost like a white trash dumpster with blinking lights, with capital W, number 1, capital K, number 1, printed on the front of it. As its lights dim and brighten, it emits mechanical beeps and whistles. What do you think about that, Jason? Asks Professor Parsafoot, who shows off the no bigger than a fist-sized robot Wiki. Jason replies, Parsafoot, how many times do I have to tell you? You're the only one that understands that thing. Parsafoot and Jason both sit at a table under the large, transparent steel dome cafeteria. The cafeteria is filled with many table and chair settings as several people partake in the food services. Along with the typical white furnishings are many potted plants and small trees, giving the room a more relaxed feeling than most of Star Command. The Wiki robot sits on their table between their plates of simple snack food. Parsafoot tries to explain the little robot. Oh, well, I had Wiki look into similar patterns in gravitational fields with boson particles. After ingesting all the data from the past 100 years, he's found that boson 6 particles can actually behave in ways similar to gravitational propagation measurements. Well, I don't have to tell you what that means. Jason relents. No, actually you do. I didn't follow any of that. Undiscouraged, Parsafoot easily explains. Well, it means that gravitational fields could actually work like quantum fields, given the proper amount of certain bosons. I'd have to test to make sure, of course. Of course, Jason replies politely. Wiki then beeps and whistles again. Jason asks, Now what was that? As Parsafoot pets Wiki like a pet. Oh, Wiki was just reminding me that I have a haircut this morning. Thank you, Wiki. Jason's amusement over Parsafoot's enthusiasm slowly turns to wonder. You know, Professor, I was wondering, if that asteroid was stable, what made it shake? Parsafoot shrugs. Well, I don't know, Jason. I mean, theoretically, it could be many things. Just then, Jason's eyes catch something outside the windowed dome in space, a bright star that seems to ever so slightly grow bigger. Parsafoot continues to talk of the asteroid JX9. I'd like to do a flyby and scan JX9 again. See if I can... Jason then wonders aloud. What the heck is that? Parsafoot looks to the object that Jason is pointing to. Oh, that's, it looks like... His eyes grow wide as the star starts to increase in size at a faster rate. Jason, I think we should leave the cafeteria. Out in space, the star can be seen more clearly as a large asteroid, about the size of one of the tall buildings on Star Command and speeding toward Star Command at terrific speed. With nothing to stay its progress, the asteroid slams into Star Command with a terrific explosion. End of Part 1. Don't miss Part 2, as we learn more of this man called Drago and discover what shape Star Command is in after such a violent impact. Well, thanks for listening to my little tale. I hope you enjoyed it. Before getting to Chapter 2, I feel a challenge must be met. So, 100 likes. Once Part 1 gets 100 likes, I'll post Part 2. Until then, smell the wiki and go seize the day. Or something like that.